Right, who's next on the chopping block? Well, I would certainly hope someone we're fighting against is going to be hostile, otherwise I'd feel guilty beating them down. Right, so most of the women in this game have the same theme music apparently. Music that sounds like very questionably done porn music. Have I mentioned that women wrestlers during the Attitude Era didn't get all that much respect? Still, she's got a solid point. Beating down Mae Young is not really an accomplishment, especially since it's not like she's anywhere near the level of Ric Flair. I swear, that guy must have been stuffed into a pickle jar, because it took decades for H to finally start showing on the bastard in both his movements and his appearance. Excuse me for not being all that worried about puppies being exposed here, though. This game most certainly didn't have enough processing power for stripping of any kind. Hell, from some angles, it looks like our arms aren't actually attached to our bodies and the clothes are literally painted onto the sprites. They are not their own separate assets. Huh. Did she not even try to go towards the ropes to break that hole? Again, crotch shots towards women shouldn't have the exact same animation as crotch shots to a guy. Well, I'll give Ivory credit. She's certainly making things a bit tougher for us than Mae Young did. That's not really all that much of an accomplishment, though. Just like it's not all that much of an accomplishment to lift a woman who's possibly under 100 pounds over your head when you're booked like you can lift 200-pound men. Hell, I'm pretty sure that China treated being made the women's champion like a demotion, considering she had won some gold like the Intercontinental title. The writers even had to give her a bullshit injury in order for her to compete in the women's level. They booked her as an absolute monster among women, as if the fact that she was called the 9th wonder of the world and was put in the men's section of this game's roster wasn't enough of a hint. It's a good thing that women's sprites aren't allowed to bleed in most, if not all, the wrestling games I know about. Otherwise, Ivory would have to change her name to Scarlet with the sheer beating we've been giving her. I actually just checked. She was a member of the stable Right to Censor. Not that she's dressed like she was for that stable at the moment. And she was absolutely squashed by China for the title when China went from competing against men to women. She put up no real offense and was just crying out in horror that she had to fight against China at all. And good God, even when she was supposed to be a face, China ended up coming across as a heel due to her attitude. But then this was the same era where people were cheering Stone Cold Steve Austin, the most openly heelish face the WWF had ever had. Punch me in the currently non-existent balls, I'll pound your skull like a drum. You know, spinning the camera like that just shows that the animation of the punches isn't actually landing. I know my punches look pretty limp or just don't touch at all in the actual live events, but what's with the excuse in this game here? Because I'm pretty damn sure this game had absolutely no motion capture involved at any stage. Hell, was motion capture even a thing yet in digital animation when this game was made? Because I distinctly remember that back then for television, it was considered a major achievement for a running TV show to have enough special effects to make multiple digital copies of a single masked goon. The show in question? Xena the Warrior Princess, which, again, I think China looks pretty similar to. Come to think of it, there were 2 Xena games released in the same console generation as this game. I don't know anything about the PlayStation 1 game. Certainly is something that at some point I should at least investigate for the hell of it. But the N64 game was a fighting one. A very bad fighting game. In fact, I only just discovered that those were 2 separate games instead of just the same game ported to 2 different systems. Anyway, enough of that. I should be more focused on what's going on in this game right now, not talking about others. Especially since I am actually pretty into what's going on here. Even if this particular title run is kind of weak in terms of story. Sorry, but I don't think I really hate anyone on the women's roster in this game. I just hate this overall era of women's wrestling in the United States. Especially since apparently women's wrestling in Japan was supposedly downright amazing back then. I've never really watched international wrestling shows, though. I've heard plenty of good things about Japanese promotions in general. I don't really know anything about any specific wrestling companies in Japan, though, and I wouldn't know what to watch and when to start the long binge. I also don't know if there's any place on the internet that would let me watch with subtitles for the announcers and the promos. But then, even that might not be enough to make me especially invested in things. I mentioned it in a previous wrestling game I LP'd, and I'll mention it again here. But I haven't watched wrestling live since around 2009 or 10. Learning about the death of Eddie Fatu, better known as Umaga, a definite favorite of mine at the time, was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of my interest in the product, especially since the WWE didn't do anything on the air to even acknowledge his death, which absolutely pissed me off since they outright milked Eddie Guerrero's for around a year, and then started off mourning Chris Benoit, only to then rapidly try to erase the man from history the instant they learned more about his death. I don't know, it just felt like my tolerance for the WWE's scummy bullshit hit a breaking point, and that made me just not want to watch any further wrestling from then on. It didn't help that they kept pushing the same few people over and over again. They literally had a 17-on-2 match where John Cena and Randy Orton just ripped through a large chunk of the roster like they were a large jobber squad before it broke down into a total mess. Anyway, on to this match. Again, I don't really have much of an opinion either way for either of the women who are competing here. I barely remember how they handled themselves in the ring. I just decided to screw over the blue-haired girl specifically because she said, "Please help me win this match." Good God, I think China is the only woman on the roster at this point who doesn't come to the ring in heels in this game.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Even with a fast count, she managed to get back in time. Again, why does this game have a 20 count system for ring outs? And please tell me, back in the day, that Tori had more going for her at this point than being associated with X-Pac, considering he was notoriously despised back then for various reasons. It's an annoying bit of baggage to bring along with you, as if the WWF/E's opinion of women wrestlers and how it's affected anyone who was a fan of wrestling promotions in the United States wasn't bad enough. It's actually kind of funny. I have nothing against seeing women in action roles in movies, TV shows, or video games. Hell, I've eagerly played as some women in some games over the years. And during this console generation, Jill Valentine from Resident Evil and Tifa Lockhart from Final Fantasy VII were two of my favorite characters. With Joanna Dark from Perfect Dark coming in close behind. Hell, when watching numerous anime that have fighting in it, shonen or some other genres that I might not know the specific names of, one of the first things I do is look and see how badass the women characters are in it, and if they're treated with the same level of respect in the fights as the boys. But with wrestling, it gets tough for me to fight against that almost programming I went through when seeing women in the ring in WCW and the WWF. Hell, I've been considering doing an LP for the first Rumble Roses game to try to get out of that mindset, even if that game was made more for fetish fuel than amazing wrestling action. Anyway, seems we're done with that match where we were just a special referee for some reason. How will the Blue Cat react? Excuse me for not being worried about this revenge. I'm sorry. You're choosing to get into a brawl in the back with China, of all women. But then she would have made that same decision even if we were playing as one of the top wrestlers in the company in the belt storyline. Seriously, if I'd chosen for some reason someone like The Rock instead of China, she would be more easily destroyed, since I'm sure that The Rock and Austin have higher stats than everyone else. And I doubt either of them back then would hesitate to slap a bitch. And Austin used to stunner Stephanie and Linda McMahon quite a few times. Okay, that was a nice looking kick, but I'm afraid that this isn't the kind of game where kicks like that mean all that much. You should have gotten yourself into one of the Dead or Alive games. I'm still debating with myself if I'm ever going to LP those, since I think there's more of a story there than Street Fighter, but it's not like I'm starved for games to LP at this point. I have more games with their footage already recorded and waiting on my drives than I have the time to get through at this point. I would ask what she was expecting to happen when she did this, but then I don't think she was planning that far ahead.
One, two, three.
Yeah, definitely the shortest match we've had in the game so far, and we can most certainly fit another one into this clip. Now, is there going to be anything in this belt story that draws me in especially well, or was this belt just an afterthought in the game? Kind of like the female wrestlers in general. Stephanie is the champ. I'm looking forward to getting China to get her hands on that princess. Not that I have anything really against Stephanie McMahon, at least nowhere near as much as I have against the business practices that her father, Vince, has done for quite a while. Hell, if anything, I was disappointed that she stepped down when her father came back after making a deal out of nowhere with Saudi Arabia. Still, on China's part at least, there was some solid animosity towards Stephanie, and that was probably one of the bigger reasons why one of the biggest female stars in the WWF/E ever had was never inducted into the Hall of Fame. Just giving up on the title without a fight. Odd considering who she'd have to face, but yeah, I can fully understand that, especially since Stephanie married the man that China thought she had a thing with. While I don't typically love anything about love triangles, I in fact hate them. The fact is that China treated that chain of events as the thing that made her life fall apart, and held that feeling to the day she died. Now, that's kind of debatable, but good God, that would certainly add some spice to the match where we end up against Stephanie. Anyway, time for us to go through a three-way, which happens to have an old woman and the only other person we beat in the ring in this belt line. Seems it's been pretty short for this particular belt line, really. Oh, and as if I needed more evidence that apparently the game just reused things for a lot of women in this game, we had just to hear Mae Young's and Ivory's placeholder theme back to back, even if I skipped over their actual entrances. Ah well, at least our opponents are wearing more proper wrestling attire than before, even if I feel that Mae Young's shoes might be a bit too formal for the occasion. I can't tell if they're outright heels, but But then it's not like I can really see Chyna's footwear all that well, with her pants being that long, so I don't know if she has a similar issue. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I have a foot fetish, at least as far as I know. It's just that, visually speaking, there aren't too many things in this game this old that would feel fair to complain about. Arms not really being attached to shoulders, pants and shirts being just painted on, faces and hair looking absolutely plastic. Those aren't issues that the game designers could have done anything about, considering the hardware they had to work with at the time. Choice in footwear, however, was not a graphical limitation as far as I know. It's a choice, so it feels more than a little fair to complain about that than the outfits that the three ladies in the ring are wearing to cover the essentials. Just saw the heel on Young's shoes when she was lifted up. Definitely not proper wrestling footwear, and the old girl should know better since she was most certainly a veteran in the business at this point. But then, as OSW Review showed me, she was not an especially skilled in-ring talent, and at least one of her wins was due to a screw job. The kind of screw job that would have made Bret Hart wince in sympathy for her opponent. Okay, so looks like Ivory is the one building momentum right now. Really surprised it's not me, especially since we've been dealing far more of the damage in this match than either of them as far as I can tell. Again, this is my fourth game on this channel that has these same mechanics. You'd think I'd have a better grasp of how they work, especially after all these years and the occasional internet search when I come back to them. Well, getting that special doesn't really help when she's getting double-teamed for it. Wasn't really going for a pin there, but considering we got one, I was expecting more than a 1 count. Speaking of surprises, I was expecting Chyna to be the one that was double-teamed, not Ivory, especially since she beat both of these women rather convincingly in one-on-one matches before this three-way. But I suppose the story in this game doesn't affect the AI in that particular way. Have I already run the joke about the hair pulling in this game to the ground? I mean, sure, Mae Young has more hair than Kurt Angle, but she's got the shortest hair in the match right now. It just feels like another of those animations like the crotch attack, where they only animated things expecting the most common denominator, and didn't take into account that not everyone is built in a way that said move would have the same generic effect. Unlike with Ivory, I'm pretty sure when we get our special ready, things are going to finish right then and there. Still, these two at the same time certainly gave us more trouble than one at a time. Not that much of a surprise considering our biggest trouble match so far in this playthrough was a handicap, but still nice to see. Zionist China is not an automatic win button for women's belt stuff. You still have to know what you're doing to some degree. And that should about do it for this clip. Okay, so the women's belt line has fewer chapters than the light heavyweight one. That's interesting to note. Not really. The journey started with the light heavyweight title, but I got stonewalled by a 2-on-1 by two guys I thought we had taken out already. And I'm hoping that defending this title is going to be a bit more interesting than going after it, considering what we faced. I suppose I could have fit more into this clip, but this feels like a good, healthy length. Besides, winning a championship is a nice ending spot.